Hi. I wish that I was getting online to talk about a victory around the DAPA case, but unfortunately, the court didn't make a decision. And I think that's really important to highlight, is that it's not that the Supreme Court decided against the DAPA case and in favor of the states. It just did not make a decision because the ruling came down to 4-4. And so this wasn't a decision against, it was a non-decision. And I have been watching the news and the coverage all morning, and have seen Republicans and have seen people who are very anti-immigrant call this a victory for themselves. But it's not a victory for them. It's a victory for no one, because again, the decision was tied at 4-4. And it really feels like it's not a victory for anyone, because democracy wasn't allowed in this case. When we don't have a ninth justice, when we have a Congress that won't even give a hearing to President Obama's nominee for that ninth seat, then democracy doesn't work. Democracy didn't work today. And if you're on the other side of the immigration issue, this also wasn't a victory for you, because, by the way, because the decision was 4-4, that means that we can actually bring back the case. We can bring back the case once a ninth justice is confirmed, which unfortunately it doesn't seem like it's going to be likely until we have a new precedent, which really just puts that much more importance and that much more significance to the November election. Not that the election in November wasn't already important enough, because it is, and it continues to be, but the stakes just got a little bit higher. This next precedent is going to nominate and select our next Supreme Court justice. And these Supreme Court justices are appointed for life. So it's not just this decision, this November decision, and this Supreme Court justice is going to really impact generations to come, not just our generation, but generations to come, and cases that will be brought up going forward. Back to the DAPA case, however, my heart is really broken that can you hear me now, Moisés? ¿Me escuchas, Moisés, o todavía no se escucha? No, a ver, espérame. Okay, I'm back. I still haven't figured out this Facebook Live thing completely. So I apologize for that. But we're back, and we're talking about the SCOTUS decision, the Supreme Court Justice decision around DAPA, and the fact that DAPA, that this decision wasn't a decision against DAPA, it was a non-decision, which means that we can bring the case back to the Supreme Court once there is a ninth justice. My heart is really broken over the fact that the court let this be a political decision and not a decision based on the law, because the law was in our favor. The law was on our side. And so this really came down to them not wanting to make a decision on a really important case, on a case that's deciding millions of people's lives, including people in my family who would have benefited from a favorable decision by the Supreme Court. Not that November wasn't already a huge deal, and this is probably one of the most important elections in our lifetimes, but now the stakes have just gotten that much higher, because whoever the president is going to appoint the new Supreme Court justice, and that justice is going to really be the person that ends up making the decision over DAPA. We're not going to stop fighting. we're not going to stop pushing forward, not just for DAPA and extended DACA, but also for immigration reform. Because as we've seen, while executive actions are good and DACA has changed millions of people's lives, especially young people's lives, and it's been a really beneficial thing, not just for the people that it's directly affected, but it's been really beneficial for our entire country, for our economy. And it's been great. However, as we've seen now, when it's an executive action, it can get tied up in the courts and is not a permanent solution. So we need to continue to fight and push for immigration reform. We can't stop until immigration reform is a reality, because this is inexcusable. I do want to take one quick moment to talk about DACA. I've seen a lot of reactions on Twitter where people are scared what's going to happen to their DACA. And DACA, just quick 20 seconds on what DACA is. DACA is an executive action that allows young people that meet certain criteria, depending on when they came to the U.S., and they have to be 30 years or younger to qualify. Then they can get a work permit, and they don't have to worry about being deported for while they have this DACA permit. DACA has not been revoked. Those of you that still have DACA can continue to have it. If your DACA is expiring, you can still renew it. That is not going away. And for those of you that qualify for DACA that haven't applied, you can still apply. That program and that executive action is not affected by this decision. So don't be afraid, because I know that a lot of people, I've seen a lot of reactions on Twitter of people who are now afraid to reapply, and rightly so, because I don't want to scare anyone, but I do think that if they came for DAPA, they can, of course, always try to fight against DACA. But for the time being, for right now, you're okay. You don't have to worry. Please reapply if your permit is expiring. It's important that we continue to show the faces, the human faces of the people that are affected by this issue. When I think back on how DACA was even achieved, it was because of young people who stood up, who were so courageous, who shared their personal stories, who gave so much of themselves for this fight. I really wish that I had better news. When I woke up this morning, I was really happy and waiting for there to be a good decision. For those of you that have seen my Facebook Lives before, I tried to do one from Mexico, where I share that I feel guilty sometimes about going home because members of my family haven't been able to go home for 10 years, and my mom hasn't seen all her kids in many years. I can't remember the last time that I was together with my 3 siblings and my mom at the same time. And that's really the real cost of the real cost of inaction is families being separated, is people not being able to be with their loved ones, is mothers not being able to hug their children. It's children not being able to see their parents. It's children having to be afraid that their mom or dad isn't going to be home when they come back from school. That's what's at stake. That was what was at stake. And it's so incredibly frustrating that the Supreme Court justices didn't make a decision, because that's what they did. They did not make a decision. They're basically leaving it up to the next term, the next president to appoint someone else, for someone else to make the decision, and our families cannot continue to wait. So we will keep fighting. We will keep pushing forward. We're not going to stop. This was not a victory for the other side. And I hope that they see that. I hope that they see that a 4-4 tie is not a win. And it's not a win because, again, we can bring back the case to the Supreme Court when there's a 9th justice. I encourage all of you to speak out. I encourage all of you to come out in support of DAPA, in support of immigration reform, And for those of you that can vote, I'm going to be voting for the first time this November, and my vote became just that much more important. I encourage all of you who can vote to come out and vote in November, so that we can have a precedent that is going to appoint the kind of justice, the kind of Supreme Court justice that is going to give a favorable ruling. And it's not just immigration that's at stake here. There's a lot of issues that are so critical to our country, to our community, that are going to keep coming up. Today's just been such a day filled with news, and there were a lot of other cases that were coming out of the Supreme Court. Of course, probably a lot of you have seen that that there was also out of the Supreme Court the affirmative action case out of Texas that had a favorable ruling, so Texas can continue to use affirmative action when they admit students. I went to the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm very happy about that decision. And it's decisions like that that are going to continue to come to the Supreme Court. And that's why it's so important that we come out and that we vote in November, because that vote that we're making is not just for precedent, but it's for the next Supreme Court justice. And that Supreme Court justice is appointed for life. So they're going to keep making decisions not just in the 8 years that the next president will be in office if they get reelected, but for many more generations to come. Sorry, I'm reading some of the questions here. Sam, I know it's really difficult to keep hope alive. We've had so many promises made to us. I remember in 2001 when the DREAM Act was first introduced. That would have given me a path to citizenship and many other young people a path to citizenship 15 years ago. And 15 years later, it still hasn't passed. So I understand that it's so difficult to keep hope alive, but that's the only thing that we can do, is to keep fighting and to keep pushing forward and to not give up. Because the minute that we give up is a minute that we have lost. But as long as we keep hope alive, then we can still keep going and we can still keep fighting. And I believe in that. I believe in just continuing to fight and continue to push forward, because that's the only thing we can do. And we can't let them win. We can't let hate win. And that's why we have to keep hope alive, even if we have to keep it alive for many more years to come. But I have a strong belief that the next president is going to act on immigration reform. And they're going to have to, because we're going to keep them accountable. We're not just going to give them our vote so that they can get elected and then not deliver on the promises that they're making us. Jose wants me to talk about advanced parole permit, which allow DACA holders to visit a sick family member in Mexico for a small window of time. Yes, if you have DACA, which again is the original executive action that was taken by President Obama in 2012, if you have DACA, you can apply for a permit called advanced parole. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a permit, but you can apply for advanced parole, and that allows you to visit your country of origin, to visit family members if someone is sick. There are also special educational reasons why you can have advanced parole. I have heard, I haven't confirmed this, but I have heard that different Mexican consulates around the United States also have been giving scholarships to people with DACA so that they can go back and visit Mexico. So I encourage you to look into that. And that's really one of the biggest reasons why DAPA was also so important, because it would have allowed people to work in the United States, to not have to fear deportation, and under special circumstances to apply for advanced parole and be able to visit their families. So I think that's going to be it for now. This is still really recent news, of course. My reactions are really raw, and I didn't prepare any remarks for this. I just wanted to get online as soon as possible and share how upset I am about this, and to tell you that I am with you, that we will continue to fight. And as the day goes on and I gather my thoughts, I will write something, post it on my Facebook page. I have been tweeting the whole morning, so if you're on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, Julissa Arce, and I'll keep you guys posted. But for now, that's all. Please know that I'm with you. We'll continue to fight, and we will continue to keep hope alive. Please, if you haven't registered to vote, register to vote. It is so incredibly critical that we all come out and that we vote. Talk to you guys soon.